You're listening to the Spark Your Light podcast, episode number 261. Just get halfway there. This episode is for you if sometimes you feel a lack of motivation or you come to this show looking for that physical spark in your step. This episode is perfect for you. It's all about how you can get yourself a little motivated to keep going and finish the things that are important to you. And this is something that so many of us have, these goals, these desires on our heart that are very important to us. But sometimes life gets hard. Things don't go as planned. And we start to struggle to remind ourselves why we started and give ourselves that motivation to finish. So in today's episode, I'm sharing a strategy that has helped me immensely and I know is going to help you. A special thank you to SoulCycle for sponsoring today's episode. So this concept I call just get halfway there. And I first learned it when I was in college. So my senior year of college, I know this is going to sound really crazy. I'm just prefacing this. I was not a normal college student, so I did a lot of just outlandish things. And one of the things I did was I ran a marathon, which I just personally think is crazy for a college student because trying to pass your classes and have a social life and all the things you're trying to balance. And I was also balancing training for a marathon. But I was really inspired to run this marathon. I ran in honor of a friend who passed away, and I just really wanted to do this, to raise money and to be a part of this. So I started training, and I don't think I had ever run more than a half marathon. So I did have some experience. A couple of my friends and I ran a half marathon, maybe our freshman year, I think, a sophomore year, maybe. And that was really fun. I enjoyed it. But when I finished 13.1, I felt like I could not take one more step. So I'm like, how the heck am I going to train for a full marathon? It just seemed so intimidating. So in the beginning of the training, I felt really good because I had already done it before. And anytime we're doing something we've already done before, it's much easier. We have the confidence. We know we can do it. Even if the first time we did it, it was a little rocky, we know it's going to get better. And so the training was going well. Then I got to the long runs that were nearing the distance of a half marathon. So I did a 10-mile long run. I think I did a 12-mile long run. And I started to feel intimidated. I started to feel like I was at my max, especially the physical soreness I would feel the next day. And so the way that I trained, if anyone here has trained for a half marathon or a full marathon, I did one long run a week, and then I did shorter runs during the week and some cross training as well, following a training schedule. And so it was the day of my long run, and I had to run 14 miles, which would be the longest I've ever run before. And I really psyched myself out. I was really nervous. And I went to Georgetown. And so I had the privilege of getting to run through really beautiful places. And one of those places is the Capitol. And so if you've ever been to DC and you've been in the Georgetown area, it's miles away from the Capitol building and some of the downtown sites. So it's a perfect run to be able to run there and run back. And so I would run to the Capitol building. I would run all around the monuments, and then I would turn around and I would come back. And so on my 14-mile run, I knew that I just had to run 7 miles. And then once I hit 7, I would turn around and I would take the same route back. And as soon as I hit that 7-mile mark and I physically turned around, I felt a weight lifted off my chest. I was like, oh my gosh, I did it. And then I thought to myself, well, that's really silly because you didn't do it. You still have 7 more miles. But I really felt that I had made it, that I had essentially done it simply because I had made it halfway. And so that's the inspiration for today's episode, this concept that once you make it halfway, you have this sense of completion, even though you still have the same amount of work in the future. It feels like you're going downhill. It's like you made it up the hill and now you're going down the hill. It's like when you climb down a mountain after you've climbed up it. It's such an amazing feeling. And in reality, the second half is still just as hard. You're not actually climbing down a mountain. You're still climbing, but you have more experience and you also have more invested into it. So I love the saying, I didn't come this far to only come this far. When you have come halfway, you now feel like, well, I'm not going to give up now. And this has been a theme, not just with running. So the running example is a great example. And I feel it still to this day, every time I go for a run. I actually took a break from running after running the marathon because I was very burnt out from so much running. And I didn't pick it back up again until recently, when I realized that running was a really good exercise I could do with a baby at home because I didn't have to drive to a gym or drive to a workout class, even though I love going to SoulCycle. I love getting out of the house, going to classes, going to yoga classes, all of those things. I don't always have the time it's going to take to drive to class, do the class, and drive home. But I do often have 20 minutes that I could go for a short run. So I've been running again, which has been amazing. And the reason I even felt inspired to record this episode is because couple of weeks ago, and I don't have the stamina I had when I was training for the marathon. I think my goal was 3 miles. And so I ran 1.5 miles and then I turned around. Same concept. I do it at home too. Wherever I am, on vacation, anytime I'm going for a run, as long as, I know where I am and it's a safe area, I'll just run straight halfway, turn around, run straight halfway back. And so I did this. And when I turned around, I was reminded of how amazing this concept is. And I'm like, this is it. And then all of a sudden it was like a flood of memories had come to me from similar experiences in my life where getting halfway there all of a sudden took the pressure off and I felt so confident I would finish. So another example is breastfeeding. So I've been exclusively pumping for Michael since he was born. I did a little bit of actual breastfeeding when he was in the hospital, but because we were doing it so limited, and the reason is because Michael gets fortified breast milk, which means he gets formula scooped in the breast milk to give him extra calories since he was born 4 pounds, 6 ounces. So he's got a lot of catching up to do and is still working on that. So pumping, if any moms are in the audience and have ever done it, is extremely difficult. It's time consuming. It's just not fun. A lot of washing bottles, washing pump parts. It's just really a huge selfless act. I still get up in the middle of the night, even though Michael's been sleeping through the night for months. I have to get up to pump for him, even though he's not actually eating the milk at that time. So it is really a big undertaking, but it was important to me. It's something I really wanted to do. And so because I wanted to commit to this, I tried all kinds of strategies to motivate myself. And I can tell you that I remember vividly the day I saw a lactation consultant in the hospital. So if you're new to this podcast, I'll just give you some context. So Michael was born 4 pounds, 6 ounces with a slew of health conditions and was in the NICU at a regional hospital and then got transferred to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where my husband and I actually moved into his room to take care of him. He was not in the NICU. He was in a regular pediatric floor, which was a really interesting experience. It was a positive that he was not in intensive care. And he also got to see the endocrinologist, which was his main issue, was with his blood sugars. And so he got to see those doctors regularly. He was on their floor, which was all the best experience ever. I couldn't speak more positively about Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It's an incredible hospital. We were very blessed that we live in the Philadelphia area, so we didn't have to go far. But we did move into the hospital and live there for a month. And the room that we lived in was a shared room. And we were on the non-window side. And Michael was hooked up to IVs a lot, feeding tube down his nose. And so a lot of times we couldn't really get outside. First of all, when you're a patient in the hospital, there's not many places you're actually allowed to go, but CHOP does have a garden that patients can go to get outside. And so we would try to go there when we could, but a lot of times he was like hooked up to different things and he couldn't be away for super long because because of the blood sugar issue, he needed to be eating extremely frequently. And we couldn't just like take a bottle with us. It was very regulated. The nurse would warm the bottle for us and bring it to us. They would mix the bottle, the breast milk and the formula in the special formula room. It's a hospital. And so there's lots of rules. So I was, as you can imagine, getting very mentally down. It was difficult to see my son struggling and feel like there was no end in sight because everything they would try just wouldn't work for him. It was difficult to be in a windowless side of a hospital room with these bright fluorescent lights. And the worst part of all of it was our sleeping situation. So I'm so grateful that my husband had paternity leave and was able to actually move into the hospital with us. And I wasn't doing all of this alone. And so I'm so grateful he was there with us. And I would not change the sleeping situation to be there alone. But because it was both of us and because the random room we got put in had a pull-out bed that was broken, it was this pleather couch that was supposed to pull out to a twin bed. But because it was broken, it didn't even pull out to a twin. So you can see the couch I'm sitting on now. It was probably around similar size. So this is like from here to here is where we slept. It was smaller than a twin bed. And so if you've ever even shared a twin bed with someone, it's extremely tight. I remember that Richie used to do that when he would visit me at college when we were dating. And I only had a twin bed in my dorm. It was like our apartment on campus dorm kind of thing. It was a twin bunk bed. And I remember thinking that was terrible. But this was so much worse. And unlike college, when it was maybe a weekend, this was for a month. Luckily, by the blessing of God and all of our prayers, we actually got upgraded to a single with windows and a functioning twin pull-out bed when we had about maybe a week left there. And so that was a huge upgrade for us. But when we were still in the old room, I called the lactation consultant. It was really another blessing was to have these incredible resources that I probably wouldn't have if I was home, at least so accessible. So there was lactation consultants who came to our room all the time, checked in on me daily. And so one day I asked one of the consultants to come up to the room. I need to talk. I need to talk because I was this close to quitting. I just felt like I am so mentally drained. And Richie and I were alternating feeding him every 3 hours overnight, but I still had to pump. And so even if like Richie was getting up to feed Michael, I still had to get up to pump. So then I was like, well, why would you get up and sacrifice your sleep when you could be like more awake during the day and, you know, help out more when you've gotten more sleep when I have to get up anyway. So then I was just getting up at least at 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Maybe I would try to sleep 4 hours. At one point, the lactation consultant said I could go 6 hours without pumping. So that was a huge stretch. Of course, I was super engorged and it was very uncomfortable, but anything to get sleep, as the moms know, and the dads. So that was something that I was just really struggling with. So I called her up and we sat down. We had a little meeting and I said, I don't want to give up, but I'm this close to giving up. What strategies can I incorporate? And she gave me all kinds of ideas. And they helped enough for me to just get through one more day. And I changed my mindset at the time. And here's another really great tip for when you're struggling with getting yourself to stay committed. Can I do it one more day? That's the question I asked myself. Can I do it one more day? If the answer is yes, I'm going to do it one more day until the answer is no longer yes. And so even though I really wanted to do it for a year, I felt like it was really beneficial to feed my child breast milk for the first year of life. If I wasn't able to do that, that was okay. It was whatever I could do, the best I could do. But I was going to truly give my best, like 110%. What is the best I can give? And from that place of struggling with resilience, I would just say to myself, can I do one more day? And if the answer was yes, I would do it one more day. And recently I passed the 6-month mark. Michael is now 7.5 months old. And I'll never forget when I hit that day, I thought to myself, I called one of my friends who has a young baby and we talk a lot about breastfeeding. And I told her, I'm going to be able to do it for the whole year. I know because I made it 6 months. And it just felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And even now when I talk about it, one of my friends, I was chatting with her on the phone the other day and she's like, how's it going? I know you really, we're struggling. Are you still doing it? All these things. And I said, yeah, and I'm so close to being done. Even though I'm really not, like I still have a significant amount of time. I still have months to go. It just feels to me like I'm right there. I'm on the home stretch. I'm on the final lap because I made it halfway. And then every day that goes by, once you've made it halfway, you have a shorter distance to go than you've already went. And if you've already done that, it was just like me running the half marathon. I had already run 13.1. And so I knew that I could do that part. That part felt easy to me because I had already done it. And so now it's like, okay, if I have, let's say 5 more months, well, I've already done 4 or 5 months. I've actually done 7.5. So that sounds really easy. And so if you are in a place where you have a goal that is big, that is hard, that requires resilience, but is important to you, this is not about just doing things to do them. I want to make this clear. So all of the goals that were really big and really hard that I've pursued were really important to me. And I allow myself to say no to things that are not. And so I have reasons that they're important to me, and I'm very clear on that. And sometimes it feels important, but I'm not sure how important. And that's something that maybe through the process and the experience, I may change my mind. So just an example here, and this is a birth story. So just like if somebody doesn't want to hear a birth story, I know some moms don't want to hear about like stressful, especially if you're pregnant right now. Michael's birth experience was a little traumatic. I won't go into any weird details or anything. It's just very general. So just skip this part if you don't want to hear that. But essentially, I really wanted to give birth without an epidural. That was something that felt important to me. I even took a class on hypnobirthing before I had Michael. Richie took the class too. Great sport. And it was important to me. But I can't say it was like so my number one thing that I was just like so insistent on it. It was just something that I really wanted to try. And essentially what happened is I was induced at 37 weeks. Michael was intrauterine growth restricted, which is why he weighed 4 pounds, 6 ounces. If you don't know what that is, essentially he was struggling to grow inside me. And so it was better for him to come out and grow outside of me because he was not getting the nutrients he needed inside of me. And so he was not ready to come out. He was pulled out. So when they tried to induce me, they tried all kinds of measures for 3 days. And it was very long. And I was in excruciating pain. I had something called Pitocin, which is a drug to induce labor, as one of the many measures. And with Pitocin, contractions are stronger and more painful. So I was in active labor for quite a long time. I don't even know how long it ended up being. Probably maybe like 15 hours. It was from Tuesday night at some point, maybe like 6 p.m. to Wednesday morning. And essentially what happened is my doctor came in and said, we've tried everything except for there's like 2 more things we can try. But they're going to require you to like move around and get in different positions. The issue is that Michael's heart rate was dropping every time they would try a different measure, every time they would increase the Pitocin, which was to help induce him and get him out. And it's because he was so small and so weak that his body just couldn't handle labor and contractions. And so I really wanted to have a vaginal birth because we want to have a big family, and it's not a great way to start as a C-section for your first, but obviously you have to do what you have to do. And so my doctor said, we're going to need you to move around and go in different positions. If what's important to you, the trying for not having a C-section or not getting the epidural. And immediately for me, it was, I would like to try everything I can to not have a C-section first. And the epidural is just like, whatever. If that's what I need to do to try this, because here's the catch. I couldn't move. So I was in so much pain. I could withstand the pain, but I just had to lay there and breathe. There was no possible way I could have like tried a different position that might have been better for his heart rate or something like that. So because of that, I immediately signed up for the epidural. I was like, how fast can you give it to me? And let me tell you, it felt amazing. And I am definitely open to it at some point for my next baby. We'll see how that flows. But that's just one example of something where, if you're not like so passionate about it, or if you have different priorities and they're going to be conflicting priorities. Like, I think that people get confused when we talk about working really hard for something. And it's really important. And the reason it's important is because if you don't have that strong why behind it, and this isn't something that you are 125% about, you're not going to do it when things are hard. You're not going to do it when time is limited or you're challenged in different ways. But when you have a really strong why, you are. So for me with the breastfeeding, I have a really strong why just with the health benefits, because Michael was so sick and he's doing so great now, but he still is extremely teeny. As of his last weight check, he was 13 and a half pounds at 7 months old, which that's, if you don't know, that's really small. He's like less than 1% still, and various other things that he's gone through. And so it's just really important to me no matter what. And so I have that strong why, which helps support difficult goals. So if you are pursuing a difficult goal and you're like, okay, I'm listening to this strategy and I want to get halfway there, but I don't know how I can have the resilience to actually get halfway. I get the strategy and I know that once I do it, then I will be able to keep going. But how do I have the resilience to get halfway there? The why, the strong why. And if you don't have a strong why, here's what I'm telling you. That's okay. You don't have to do it just because. It's okay if something is important to you, but not that important. But for the things that you are like, I want to do this so bad and it will make me feel so good and so proud of myself, those are the things that it's important that you go back to that why, connect to that why, and go back to that strategy of, can I do it one more day? And if your answer is yes, then keep going. And usually when we break it down to those small bite-sized pieces, we usually have enough resilience to just take that little step, little step, little step. And the last piece I'll give you for getting to that halfway point is hope. So something I learned with Michael's time in the hospital is that I couldn't use the just get halfway strategy because I didn't know what halfway was. And at one point I started to think we might be in here for a couple of months. Michael's doctor started to talk about how, some kids had really serious versions of this condition he was diagnosed with, and they need to have their pancreas removed. And I was like, well, when can he get that surgery if he needs that? And they said, well, there's only, one doctor that specializes in it for babies and for his specific condition. And so there is like a wait list of maybe it was 10 weeks or something like that. And so, okay, immediately we're in here for 3 more months. Just between getting on the wait list, getting the surgery, right? And so there were so many thoughts for me, and we're so blessed that his was much less extreme than that, and he was able to grow out of it, and his condition was able to be managed at home. And so we're really, really grateful. But there was a time where I couldn't just tell myself, just get halfway there, because I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know when we were halfway or how long this would be. And so some of you may be listening and you may be in a similar situation to where you're working on something, but you don't know what halfway is. You don't know how long it's going to take, and there's no way to really break that down. And so if that's you, hope is an incredible strategy. I know it feels counterintuitive because you might feel like you don't want to get your hopes up, and that's how I felt. But what I learned is that when I chose to not get my hopes up, I actually had the lowest amount of resilience from the entire experience, because without hope, you have nothing. Despair is so much worse than disappointment. And when I had hope, I had the resilience to get through one more day. So I encourage you to lean into hope. Ask yourself if you can do it just one more day. And if you do that over and over and over again, you will get halfway there. And once you get halfway there, it's going to feel a whole lot lighter. So I hope this episode is helpful for you in whatever you're pursuing and whatever is important to your heart and whatever those goals are. You can do it. You can get there. I believe in you. It takes a why. It takes sacrifice. And it takes all of these mindset pieces. It's not easy, but you're capable. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. And I will catch you in the next episode. And by the way, if you want to watch the video and you didn't know this is on video, you can tune into YouTube. I always wanted to watch video podcasts so that I could like fold my laundry or do the dishes while I put it on the TV. And none of the podcasts I listen to are really on video. And so that's one of the reasons why I was really excited to have this podcast on video. So all of our episodes are on video. Check them out on our YouTube channel. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.